of the rules of engagement, to please be respectful of others while they are speaking and to please refrain from clapping. Delegations will have 5 minutes to speak, and we are asked to stay focused on the agenda item. Please remember to silence all your cellular devices. And now for roll call, we have to my left our CAO, Mike Kirkopoulos. We have Councillor Paul McPherson, Councillor Mike Mikulik, Mayor Sandra Easton. To my right, we have Councillor J.D. Pachariva, Councillor Tony Brunet. We have regrets from Councillor Rajima, and I should also mention regrets from Councillor Reimer this evening. On the far end, on my right, we have Councillor Adam Russell. And staff are in attendance. Does anyone have a declaration of interest to declare? Seeing none. There are no statutory public meetings on the agenda. And tonight we have a presentation. We have Julie Andrews, our Chief Executive Officer from the Library Board. She is here to present with respect to an update and the 2019 work plan. Julie, if you could please come forward. And we also have Donna Burton joining us as well. Donna, are you the chair?
I am.
Okay, chair of the Library Board.
I am the Library Board Chair. And my sole purpose here tonight is to formally introduce to all of you our new library CEO. I know a number of you have already met her, but this is her first appearance before council. And I just want to let you know that Julie comes to us from the Brampton Public Library, and where she was Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships. And her responsibilities included library collections, programming, marketing, and communications. And she's had a very busy 7 weeks since she started in mid-April. And she's been getting to know the library staff and the Lincoln community, and working, of course, with a newly appointed board and chair, and tackling a lot of library priorities, some of which were unanticipated. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie now, and she is going to provide you with an update on the library. Julie.
Thank you very much, Donna. Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff. Thanks very much for having us here. It's my pleasure to be here to represent the library this evening. As Donna mentioned, the first 7 weeks have been absolutely fantastic. I have been welcomed warmly, and I just feel blessed to be part of this really vibrant and amazing community. Before I even started in the role, I was given a tour of all the town offices by Jacqueline and met all the staff before I'd even started. And since then, I've been able to meet many or most of you at the Mayor's Luncheon and at the Mayor's Golf Tournament celebration last week. It's been fantastic. The Niagara Region CEOs group has been really fantastic too. As soon after my arrival, we had to work together to address some funding cuts for our delivery services and to provide feedback to the regional review panel. There's definitely a spirit of cooperation and collaboration in the Niagara Region. In addition, our library has been busy presenting hundreds of programs to area residents of all ages. I've been thrilled to see the engagement so far, the community spirit that's been demonstrated many times, and it makes me really excited for the future. But before we get to the future, I'd like to talk a little bit about 2018 and what we accomplished. So, a few numbers. Lincoln Public Library loaned about 220,000 items to our 5,640 active members last year. Of these, approximately 9,500 were circulated via the Libraries in Niagara Cooperative, the LINC, and 1,200 were through interlibrary loan from other systems. So since the cuts, you might know, we've worked in cooperation with our LINC partners and to resume the services that are developing a plan to manage interlibrary loan requests. In addition, we're looking at how and what we purchase for our collections and adding some exciting new items to borrow, which will provide support for early literacy and increase physical literacy and community awareness. Nearly 176,000 people visited the library last year. That is 8 times each for every resident of Lincoln. Our goal still is continuous improvement, and we hope to surpass this for 2019. Our library provides an amazing array of programs for all ages, and this is a testament to the dedication of our small and talented staff and our community partnerships. More to come on programs in the next slide. With over 90,000 physical items and thousands more ebooks and online items, in addition to access to the collections of all the other Link libraries, we offer hundreds of thousands of choices for our members. Reciprocal borrowing with our neighbors helps us cooperatively offer better service. And we're excited that our new partner, Grimsby Public Library, will be offering free reciprocal borrowing for Lincoln and West Lincoln residents in the very near future. Being fiscally responsible is vital, and we're examining all our programs, services, and collections to ensure that our expenditures are made around evidence-based decisions. The provincial operating grant has been frozen at the level provided since the mid-1980s, and the library has historically applied for various grants throughout the year to help support operations and has benefited from the generosity of the Mayor's donation of funds from the golf tournament and other donations. So a little about our programming. As a trusted place for early literacy support, Lincoln Public Library provides a range of programs to engage and inspire the 0 to 5 crowd and their parents. In addition, we offer a place for new parents and families to interact, which is important to build social capital. For example, our Pirate Teddy Bears picnic last week was extremely gratifying to welcome over 200 to celebrate reading and learning. And a shout out to our Parks and Rec colleagues for their assistance as we had to quickly relocate the event inside at the Fleming Center because of wet weather. For bigger kids, we offer a variety of STEM and science programs along with art and games and movies. Tweens and teens benefit from having a place to congregate and programs designed to appeal to their creativity as well as to help with life skills. Lincoln Library is a place to grow. We also have a huge variety of programs provided for adults. Presented by library staff and industry experts and community partners, they're very popular and we often have wait lists. The support of lifelong learning is a goal for us, and our staff work hard to develop and provide opportunities for experiential learning. For example, our partnership with the Chamber of Commerce has enabled us to offer a very successful Lunch and Learn program. Offering speakers as well as networking opportunities for local business, it has been very well attended. In addition to programs in-house, we provide outreach programs at the Adult Learning Center, and opportunities to interact with social service agencies at the library are beginning soon. These are just a few facts for those who may be new to council. I won't read through them all, but the seed library is particularly great. It's very much a self-serve service, and members can drop in and borrow seed packages and are welcome to donate seeds from their garden successes in the fall. We have an incredible local history collection at our Moses F. Rittenhouse branch, and this fall we'll complete the digitization of our local newspaper collection in partnership with the Ontario Genealogical Society. With the help of our wonderful town IT department, we're also on the way to becoming a family history affiliate library, which will mean access to thousands of genealogical records for no charge for our members. This next slide is just a visual representation of our staff. In view of the hours of service per week and the incredible roster of programs, it highlights that we're a lean and efficient operation. Our program partnerships with town departments and community partners are key to our success. And now for the coming soon page, which is the most exciting. Lincoln Public Library offers a summer reading club for children, teens, and adults. With hundreds taking part, it's by far our largest program of the year, and a huge number of activities are planned. Lego, robots, science and tech, movies, gardening, nature programs, DIY workshops, and crafts. We have something for everyone, we hope. We've secured Canada's Summer Jobs funding to support 2 8-week positions for local youth for this summer, and we'll invite our youth volunteers to assist in the delivery of programs as well. In addition, we'll host a student through the Northern Youth Abroad program. A student from the Northwest Territories will be placed with a family in Beamsville, and they'll volunteer their time at the library. So look for the library out and about in the community this summer too. As we begin to survey our community and gather data for our strategic planning process, we'll be popping up at the Farmers Market, Canada Day celebration, and in local parks. Something else new that we've just partnered with Niagara Peninsula Conservation Area to offer passes for groups of 4 to visit Balls Falls. Library supports physical literacy by offering those who may not have visited a conservation area before the opportunity to engage in the world outside and hopefully to develop a habit of discovery. And this is the other thing we're going to introduce this fall. These are launch pads, and they are educational tablets for children. They're preloaded with math, reading, and STEM activities. They require no internet connection, and they can be borrowed for a week from the library. So we're excited. We're excited to be able to provide these resources to support digital literacy for 21st century kids. I really thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you all, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have some.
Very good, thank you, Julie. I'm going to open it up to any questions from council. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Donna and Julie for the presentation. Interested in some of your numbers, and they certainly are impressive. How do you track visits? How is that done? Pardon me?
We have little door counters
Okay.
in both branches.
Okay.
So we actually
So
physically count.
you see feet walking in and?
Yeah,
Okay, okay, and so we've got 2 libraries.
Right,
So these numbers are combined.
they absolutely are, yes.
Would you have them broken out? Would
I
we
do
be
have them
able to
broken out.
see what we're getting at Rittenhouse Library?
Absolutely, I can
From
send
all
that
of the,
information to you,
all
sure.
of these numbers
Yeah.
would be interesting to see.
Sure.
How many memberships we have there, how many versus, the Fleming Library, just to see, how do they differ, if they do?
Sure, we can send you that data,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay, great, but, no, it looks good. Thank you, Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
or Madam Chair. Madam Mayor, Madam
Anyone?
Chair.
I didn't even notice. Anyone else? Oh, I have Councillor Russell,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're not
or
on.
Deputy Mayor Russell, sorry.
He's not gonna get on.
Okay,
Nope.
no, you're not off. There we go. Okay, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Julie, for the presentation. Just a little bit more information on the Seed Library. Is that at both branches? Just at Fleming? And how does one make withdrawals from the Seed Library?
One just comes in and borrows them at will. We have them there. They're all in order of species, and you can pick a few packages to take home and try.
Really? Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Next, we have Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think your timing is impeccable, Julie and Donna. It's very nice. It's a nice way to introduce yourself to us. And I think it would be great to have that breakdown of numbers. So Julie, if I had been on the interview committee, I would have asked you this question. What is your plan to have a cat at the library? What would you have said?
I would love to have a cat at the library. However,
Good answer.
some people have allergies, so we have to be careful.
So you would get a cat that.
In a heartbeat.
That you would get a cat, though, that people, there are certain
A
cats.
hypoallergenic cat?
Hypoallergenic cat.
Sure, I would.
You would find a way to have a cat at the library. Well, that's good. I mean, that would have been very much in your favor. That would have been worth at least 5
Darn.
points. Donna may have told you in advance that the mayor would ask a question about Sunday operations, and I'm really in earnest about this.
Yes.
Because I do worry about the access for young people who don't have the right equipment to study, especially up till the end of the year. What are your plans in that regard?
So we're, as you know, we're open until the very end of June on Sundays, so we'll just be closed for those 2 months in the summertime and then back in September.
In the fall? Okay, and it's your plan to maintain that level of service?
At the present time, yes. Since I've just been here for 6 weeks, I need to get in and see
Right.
how that goes.
So could we be assured that if that was going to change, that you would let us know in advance?
Definitely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. I would love to see the information that you presented tonight through you, Madam Chair, publicized. Lately on social media, there's been so much intimation that libraries aren't important, And I think it's really just that those people aren't using the library, and they don't have a very broad perspective on what the library has to offer. What can you do about that?
It's always a challenge for us to make the unseen seen in the community, but we do try via social media, as you said, through all the platforms, but just by being out in the community and making ourselves visible and talking, and for you all to talk to and advocate for us and our services.
I think sometimes, Madam Chair, if we had information, when you're posting all the time, we can certainly continue to comment and make sure that we retweet or, repost. I was interested in your mention of the genealogy element, and I'm interested in that because I'm trying to determine if there is a duplication with the Lincoln Archives, and how would we interpret the difference?
I'm sorry, I'm pleading newness once again, so I haven't had a chance to investigate what the archives has in its holdings. I do know that we have significant materials that we are digitizing, as I mentioned, the newspaper, but other materials as well that we are happy to share and really want to share. Through digitization, it's the best way to provide the greatest access, but I'd love to see the way that we could share our resources with the
Okay.
archives.
And the Tweedsmuir histories, I have been concerned about the condition of them because they've been so accessible to people. Have you had a chance to look at those yet? Okay. Well, I'll leave that with you, but I
Okay.
would certainly be interested in hearing more about what your plans are because they're pretty important diaries. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Most
Madam
welcome.
Chair.
Thank you, Mary Easton. Next, we have Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the presenter. Thank you very much. The numbers look great. It's great to see people are still using the library of all ages. Something of interest is the new technology that you're bringing forward. Just curious about how do you track these devices that they don't walk out the door and come back 30 years later, similar to a library book, like the cost, and how do you ensure that we have these, the high-tech devices returned?
Absolutely, good question. So these will be barcoded just like all of our other materials and borrowed the same way that other materials are borrowed. So we'll keep track of who has them, and we will track them the same way we would track an expensive library book and make sure they're returned.
Okay, that's just my concern is
Absolutely,
when
I
you read
understand.
in, you read in the New York Times about somebody returning a book 35 years later, and
Yes.
these things are pretty expensive, and as long as they don't walk out the door and find a way back, right?
There are best practices around that, Councillor, and we work with other libraries in the region. Niagara Falls also has these,
Yeah.
and Brampton, where I came from as well. So I have all that in my back pocket and try to keep them all safe.
And I think it's great that we're able to, through you, thank you. I think it's great that we're able to lend these sort of devices out to those that may not be able to afford to buy them. And that way, by being able to borrow them, it's a great way of learning. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mikulik. And I see no one else in the queue. Ladies, thank you very much for coming in. Our libraries are vital to our community in literacy for all ages and for access to people that certainly may not have be able to have books. And these launch pads, I think, are great. That's exciting. I'm really excited about that. I follow you relentlessly on Facebook and all the posts and Twitter and all the programming that's going on, and I'm just amazed every day when I see something new come out. You're always something new and exciting happening, and I think it's wonderful. And I saw the teddy bear picnic, and it's like 200 children. Like, that's incredible. Like, those are amazing numbers. I know when I was on the library board a couple years back, there was a lot of struggle around teens and tweens. And I see some programming happening there, and if you could just comment on your strategy to engage that age group, because they're difficult to engage.
They are. We've had quite a bit of success with the tween age group. So we're offering them something cool after school. So they come in and it's craft-based, but it's a way of getting them together and giving them a place to come and making them feel comfortable at the library so that we can get them doing other things as well. The teen audience is always a challenge. In the past, my strategy has been to provide really solid learning pieces for teens. So Toastmasters and babysitters training and all those types of things that are something they can put in their pocket, you know, some educational aspects of the library. And we've had good success with that. So I think that's probably the way we'll go here.
That's great. Thank you very much. I was just having a little conversation just the other night about libraries. And we have a tiny library up in our community in Camden. There's some in other, different spots over the town as well. And it's incredible. Every time I drive by there, there's somebody in there looking through those books. And it's still there. I don't know why people don't, they start, there's comments about libraries not being as important as they should be anymore. And I just don't see it at all. And the success of that little library, that just showed me right there, like, it's just booming. It's full of books. So,
In the last few weeks, after the cuts were announced at the province, we've had significant support coming out every day
great.
from our members, and we really appreciate that.
well, thank you very much for coming out tonight. And
Thank you.
with that, thank you. We will have a motion to receive and file the presentation regarding the library board update and the 2019 work plan. I require a mover. Councillor McPherson. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. So we have one delegation this evening. Carolyn Hoxie of Cave Springs Camp will speak regarding item 8.1 PD-40-19, Cave Springs Camp Building Permit Fee Relief. Carolyn, if you could please come forward.
I appreciate the chance to speak tonight. I just wanted council, this is a Business and Finance Committee meeting, correct? To understand the importance of us getting relief. We're fundraising for this new build at Cave Springs Camp. We're currently a 5.5-month program, and we're trying to expand to 12-month. The camp has been in existence since 1946, and we serve 3,500 school kids and other community groups. With the expansion, we could easily go to 5,000. We provide an opportunity for kids to get outdoors, play, bond, learn how to be great, caring community citizens in a very cost-effective way. There really isn't such a facility elsewhere, even in Niagara region, and we're the only camp that integrates the fully disabled children into our regular program. In fact, the funders that used to fund it went defunct, and we took it over this year. Lots of community groups have gone in and out of Cave Springs over the year, and we'd like to maintain that use. And although it's used across Niagara region, it certainly is a jewel in Lincoln here. Many of the user groups come here, and we've got great community support. But without the fundraising campaign, the renting costs would be too high, and we would miss renting to the very population we're looking to serve the most.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Questions from council or comments? Mayor Easton?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Carolyn, I wonder, the last time that I was at the camp, which was what, a month ago maybe, 5 weeks ago, we were talking about the kind of programming that you were going to be offering over weekends and for children that had disabilities. I'd like you to talk to the committee about that, because it is pretty unique.
Certainly.
What you have in mind.
So we do a lot of team building types of activities, pond studies, outdoor education, environmental. But we also rent to other groups that facilitate programs. For instance, like the Red Roof Retreat. They want to be able to rent several times a year and run programs. And they deal with just disabled children. So not only do we plan on presenting our own programs for their use, but we also make ourselves available to other community programs like Pathstones for mental health issues with young children, whether it be adults, whether it be, I know I just talked to someone recently that wants to run anger solution boot camps out there. There's always a need in the community for different types of situations in which you can address needs within the community that aren't easily addressed in other locations. The fact that the camp is isolated, people, when they get back into the environment, they have a chance to relax, and it's pretty stress-free when you're out there, unlike talking to council.
Right. Yes, it looked quite very much like a dormitory with a massive fireplace in the center, lots of windows, and important accoutrements like adult changing tables and that sort of thing. So it gives you an idea of what people are facing when they're having to deal with this level of care every day.
Adult changing tables in that we have 3 fully accessible bathrooms, and all our bathrooms are universal design.
Great, thank you for that.
We don't want to have any barriers. The biggest barrier actually always comes down to economics.
Absolutely, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have Councillor Pachariva next.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. Okay, thank you, Chair Timmers. Thank you for coming tonight, Carolyn. How close are you to the total fundraising goal?
Our total fundraising campaign is 2.4. That includes property updates. Our building was 1.677.
Okay.
We're at 1.2. We've completely paid for the outer shell. Now we're working in the inner shell, and we hope to go back to construction by the end of the month. We just recently have received some generous donations.
Yeah, because there's another group that I represent, that the Wise Guys Foundation, that charity fund, that have, yes,
Yes,
that-
as well.
yeah, that contributed to the fund, and I've actually got to email you to ask you if you'd like to come to our golf tournament this year to promote the camp and what you do, and that's an opportunity of helping spread the word of the good that you do, and the accessibility to all. So look for an email from me. You're on my list. Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm not a good golfer.
No,
I was at 20 Valley. My brother went on to become an assistant pro, and I got my father to buy me a flute instead.
Yeah.
But
no,
I'm happy to come out and support it.
Yeah, it's just promoting your group and handing out information to the golfers, so.
Yeah, I'd love to come. Thank you for
Fantastic.
the invitation.
Thank you, Councillor Pachariva. Anyone else? Seeing no one. Thank you, Carolyn, for coming this evening. And we would like to, I would like to come for a tour. When
I'd love to have you.
I would like to see when your building is ready for that, and hopefully we'll all have an invite to come and tour your facility, so
You can even come during the construction phase if you'd like. We'd love to have you.
thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for having me. You're welcome. So there being no further discussion, we have a motion to approve the request by Cave Springs Camp, Inc. for a refund of the building permit fee paid in the amount of $8,512, and that the refund be funded from the Operating Rate Stabilization Fund. We require a mover for that motion. Councillor Pachariva? Sorry. Okay. Okay, it's in my script. So, okay, thank you very much. Sorry if I'm ahead of myself with that motion. So it will be coming up in our reports, and then we will deal with the motion? Is that correct?
We finished delegation,
Yes?
and then we go to number 7,
Yes?
consent.
Okay. Okay. My apologies, everyone. Getting ahead of myself again with my script. Okay. So we are now returning to the main agenda. Under consent agenda, we have none. Under our regular agenda, we are now considering item 8.1 PD-40-19, Cave Springs Camp Building Permit Fee Relief. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none? So we have a motion. Bear with me, I will read it again. Approve the request by Cave Springs Camp, Inc. for a refund of the building permit fee paid in the amount of $8,512, and that the refund be funded from the Operating Rate Stabilization Fund. We will require a mover for the motion, and we had Councillor Pachariva. All those in favor? And those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you for your patience on that, council. Thank you, Carolyn. We are now considering item 8.2 FN-10-19, asset management update. And Terry Trewola, Associate Director of Finance and Administration, will speak to this report. Thank you, Terry.
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I'm here to talk about asset management. A little overview about what I'm going to be talking about tonight. I'll explain what is asset management, how is Lincoln positioned to take on asset management in the future, and then at the end I'll provide a few key takeaways from the rest of the presentation. So the first thing I want to mention is, if you were to ask me, where do you want to live? I think I would probably say a mansion with a few acres of land. And if you were to ask me, what car does your family want? I think I'd be happy with an $80,000 sports car. And then finally, if you said, where does your family want to go to relax on vacation? Definitely the Bahamas. That's awesome. That's what I want to do. Unfortunately, when my family actually gets together and takes into consideration the money coming in and the day-to-day expenses that we have, it becomes quickly apparent that this isn't going to happen for us. So where do we compromise, since we need a home, a mode of transportation, and a way to relax as a family? Well, first of all, we don't really need such a big house. There's only 3 of us. So let's just keep our current house, and we'll get a loan to do some renovations so that it meets our current needs. Next, while we do need a mode of transportation, even if we could scrounge up enough to buy the sports car, the cost to maintain it and the cost for gas is going to be really expensive. And then, let's go with a more cost-effective and fuel-efficient Mazda. It's safer anyways, and then we'll be able to replace it in about 5 to 10 years. But surely we can spend a week in paradise, right? I'm afraid not. When we're looking at all of our day-to-day expenses, we simply can't afford it. It looks like we're going to be pulling out the old tent and heading out into nature again. Actually, you know what though? We got some extra money from the government this year with our income taxes, and my son's almost a teenager. Where did it go? Let's upgrade. Sorry guys. Let's upgrade the tent this year to meet our growing demand and also to provide better service. So when my family's having these discussions about what our priorities are for the future and how much can we spend, we're engaging in a form of asset management. Asset management may seem like a new buzzword, maybe an emerging fad like big data or cryptocurrency, but asset management is about how we manage our assets to deliver services to our communities. This isn't new. This is what municipalities have always done. What is emerging are the structured approaches and the sharing of best practices with the goal of maximizing benefits, reducing risk, and providing satisfactory and sustainable levels of service to the community. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities defines asset management as an integrated approach involving all departments to effectively manage existing and new assets to deliver services to the community. The fundamentals of asset management, as you can see here, municipal assets exist to provide value to the organization and the stakeholders we serve. Asset can include people and processes and knowledge, but we're focusing on infrastructure assets, which are our physical assets. Asset management translates organizational objectives into technical and financial decisions, plans, and activities. And organizational leadership and culture needs to support the achievement of plans and goals. And then lastly, asset management gives assurance that assets will fulfill their required purpose. Municipalities across Canada and even the world are facing similar challenges. Population change. In Lincoln, we're facing population growth. This puts a strain on existing infrastructure and also increases the demand for new infrastructure. The municipal funding model. Municipalities receive 8 cents of every tax dollar paid by Canadians, and yet we're responsible for 60% of the infrastructure assets. 35% of Canadian infrastructure is in need of attention, and this increases the risk of service disruption. Climate change. Natural disasters are more prevalent now, and that impacts our infrastructure and our ability to provide services. And just this past week, we've seen flooding again with high lake levels. And then another challenge is service expectations, because most citizens don't fully understand what their municipal tax goes towards. The full cost of services is complex, but it's important that we get better at explaining it. So how can asset management help in the face of these challenges? Well, for the community, it'll give them a better understanding of the challenges. It'll give them a better understanding of where the money goes and a better appreciation for the services that we provide. It'll also increase the trust that they have in municipal staff and in council. The benefits to council is that you'll have better engagement with the community, a better connection between the service needs, infrastructure requirements, and the rate setting. And we'll have more robust and defensible processes, which will make it easier for you to make the hard decisions. So when enhancing strategic asset management, it's important to have organizational champions for the new concept. Jillian Harrison and I have bonded over our love of asset management. We're huge advocates for evidence-based decision-making. And we've gathered an asset management committee who are starting to collaborate on initiatives. We've completed the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or FCM, maturity index. And I shared that with you last year, and I'll give you an update on it on the next slide, I believe. So now we need to plan our journey. So I'm actually going to use an analogy that Councillor Mikulik brought up during our strategic priority setting, which is how do you know you're winning if the finish line hasn't even been drawn? So we need to take a look at where we're starting from, then determine where we need to be. This will require a lot of engagement with the community to find out what services they prioritize and where they're willing to spend their money. So once we know the starting and the finishing line, we can actually map out the route. But how asset management differs from an actual race is that we never actually cross the finish line. Asset management's an ongoing process that all municipalities undertake. So we need to make sure that we check in on that finish line on a regular basis so that we know the route we're taking is still appropriate. Okay, so these 5 competencies are the key for sustainable service delivery. We want to build a robust understanding of our asset needs and implement good practices for caring for them. People in leadership is about setting up cross-functional teams with clear accountability. Asset management requires adequate resources and commitment from senior management and elected officials. We have an asset management committee whose goal is to guide the planning and implementation of Lincoln's asset management program. The next step is to develop a roadmap for the program and really lead our departments through the improvements and changes that are required. Council has demonstrated buy-in in the past and a willingness to allocate resources to asset management projects. As part of the gas tax funding report that's also on tonight's agenda, we're asking that you champion asset management as a core business function and approve funding for those activities, which are going to enhance Lincoln's asset management program. So municipalities need to collect and use data, performance data, and financial data, and for financial information to support the planning and the decision making. So Lincoln already has an inventory of all of our assets that's updated annually as part of our financial year end. There are condition assessments for many of the asset classes. In fact, we're mandated to do condition assessments on some of our critical assets. Some of the condition assessments for our non-critical assets, though, were performed a number of years ago, and they're no longer adequate for where we want to go now. The next steps are to ensure that all classes have a condition rating system and document the process for keeping the data current. And we have some of the performance data about critical assets, but the next step are to define service level of service measurements for each of the service areas. Then capture the current measurements as a benchmark for our continuous improvement. We have historical financial data for all assets, but we need to link that financial information to the levels of service in order to be able to understand the trade-offs between investment and services. Then use that data to optimize our financial plans. And as we collect more data over time, our asset management plan is going to improve. Planning and decision making. It's about documenting and standardizing how we set asset priorities, then plan for capital, operating, and maintenance expenditures. So Lincoln's departments follow similar but informal asset planning approaches. Each department uses their own process to identify the projects most important to their services. Then we bring them together into the 10-year capital plan and the annual budgets. The goal we're working towards is to have a consistent, structured asset planning approach for all services and to adapt that approach to align with evolving organizational objects and goals. Our 2016 asset management plan was based on a mix of estimated and actual data, but has become more of a snapshot in time rather than a living document. Asset management plans should be integrated across all services and be kept current as a feature of normal business. Risk management and needs forecasts are important components and should address risks to both service and business goals. The best practice for budgets and financial planning is to have multi-year needs-based budgets that are based on short and midterm needs. And there should also be a structured approach to address in-cycle changes. Lincoln currently prepares our annual budgets based on a mix of historical values and new priorities, and our 10-year capital plan is reviewed to inform the annual budget and updated based on an assessment of risk and needs. So policy and governance. Organizations need asset management policies and objectives, which are brought to life through a strategy and a roadmap. Progress and implementation should be measured and monitored over time. Last year, Council approved our asset management policy, which we're starting to use as a guide. And although we've identified the benefits we want out of asset management, we don't yet have a roadmap detailing the necessary actions for implementing the strategy. And we've also started to identify the short-term assets that help us progress with asset management, but the goal is to monitor performance and use feedback to prioritize and make ongoing refinements and improvements to our practices. And then finally, the contribution to asset management practice. That's about supporting staff in asset management training and sharing knowledge both internally and externally. So currently our training is more informal, driven by personal initiative, but we're members of asset management organizations and we reach out to peers in order to share our experiences. It's important that we continue to mitigate the risk of losing information by improving record keeping and support a culture of knowledge sharing. We should also communicate the benefits of asset management to the public and how it's going to help them understand the town's assets, services, challenges, and funding. So as I mentioned, I promised a few asset management takeaways. The first one is that the town of Lincoln is already doing asset management, but it's a work in progress. The second is that a formal approach to asset management can help us overcome the challenges we're facing today and help to set us up for the future. And then the last item is that how can council support asset management practices, policies, and principles? And that's through engagement and input into the levels of service and the priorities. Also by communicating with the community about the trade-offs between service and investment. And finally, by having a commitment to and providing resources for continual improvement. So thank you for your time, and hopefully I have time for questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open up the queue if there's any questions from council. We have Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. I don't really have a question, but I can tell you that this is very timely because Councillor McPherson and I just came back from 4 days in Quebec City at FCM, and if there were two takeaways from that conference where there was 2,100 delegates from coast to coast to coast, it was about climate change, and it was about natural catastrophes and how it's impacting regions and municipalities. And driving down here tonight, I heard someone on the radio saying that Lake Ontario has now reached its highest level ever. And, you know, we're having erosion on our lake shore, and we're having our boardwalk at Charles Daly Park knocked out. And yeah, I'll tell you, when you talk to some of these communities, like Fort McMurray, you know, 40 years ago, they said that the largest catastrophe that had ever occurred was $300 million. Fort McMurray was $2.4 billion. And it's changed communities for forever. So emergency preparedness and asset management, I think, is very, very timely. And you know, we live with a railroad going through our municipality on the Queen Elizabeth Highway, and we need to be ready for this as well as, you know, setting the policies and the preparation. So I look forward to working with you and the entire organization to move this forward because, like I say, coming away from 4 days at FCM where you're talking to municipalities that are experiencing these type of catastrophes. While we were there was a hurricane in Orleans. So it's very, very timely, and I appreciate the work you're doing on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brunet. Next, we have Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I did enjoy the introduction and all your examples there. That was very good. You know, just on top of Councillor Brunet's comments, you know, I think this is where we want to be going. You know, I know it's early days, you know, by the sounds of where we're at today, but you know, if you look at the one slide you had, you know, you broke it out very nicely with the 5 categories. And, you know, the first note I made is, you know, maybe a question, you know, who is on the committee? Who's on that today? I don't know if you've got council involved in that or if that's staff only. Don't necessarily have to answer that yet, but when looking at planning and decision-making, you made a comment of multi-year needs-based budgets. Fantastic. Multi-year needs-based budgets. You know, and, you know, what do we need to do this year, next year, the 3rd year, the 4th year, and hold our feet to the fire, you know, and be committed for at least in the near term. And then as we move out to 10 years, it can change, but we need to be committed. So, and the other comment you made with regards to policy and governance is a roadmap detailing actions is lacking. So, you know, I know we've got some work to do there, but I think your presentation, you know, was bang on with first of all where we're at and where we need to go. And asset management was a top of mind topic at FCM. You know, that communities that are planning effectively down the road and looking to the future are out in front of others with their asset management strategy. So just back to maybe the question about who's on the committee. Through you, Madam Chair.
So through the chair, currently it is made up of entirely staff, but it is a cross-departmental. We have somebody from all of the different departments on it. But with asset management, we will be needing to bring in council into those discussions. But as you mentioned, it's very early on in the process. And just to respond to the multi-year needs-based budgets, I do feel that that's a best practice, but it is gonna take us some time to get there, because before you can commit to 3 years, you really need to have your plan in place, or else the next year you're gonna come back and say, well, that budget really doesn't match where we wanna be. So we need to have that long-term plan before we can move into those multi-year budgets. But we still need to think larger.
And I would say, you know, I have no issue with that. You know, it's about choices. You know, it's going to take all of us to commit, you know, and, you know, we all have wants, you know, in our various areas, and we can't buy everything, you know. So I think the sooner we get into that mode and get going on a multi-year strategy, the better. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Chair. Said it again.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Next, we have Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. You must be dying. You did a really, really great job, and obviously you're very enthusiastic, and so we have to assume that you're one of the leaders, and that's very good. So I'm glad that you're doing this, because you'll set the example. So now let me give you a hard time. I really believe in asset management plans and strategic asset management plans and planning for the future and keeping track of things and auditing and all of that good stuff. So let me say that I like your presentation and it's absolutely moving in the right direction. But I didn't really hear you say anything about the cultural formation. So I'm curious to know, if we're going to make this investment, what kind of affirmation do we have that everybody is going to be on board? Because it can't just be the committee you've started with. And I worry that we will spend so much time with the people who are already in the choir that the rest of the group aren't coming along, because we do need to move fast on this. And I think that's the point I want to make with you. I'm where Councillor McPherson is, but he's not pushing. Now I'm pushing. This is great, but this has really been, this kind of thing has been on the books for a long time. So I need to hear from you how you think we're going to move forward. And I'm also talking about performance management. I mean, if I've got a really great idea and I'm working in public works, is anybody going to be listening to my idea? How can I contribute on a performance management basis and get some credit for it in the organization? Have you thought about these things? So start with the idea of culture, move on to the issue of how can a person contribute individually, because and then I want to hear what you have to say about speed.
So through the chair, I have done a lot of work with change management, and one of the essential components of change management is that you don't back away from those hard discussions with the people who are resisting change. And it's not always the one that's complaining about having to do something different. It's the ones who are saying, well, this is gonna blow over, so I'm just gonna keep on doing what I've always done. So with the culture, it's about having the communication to find out how all of the areas are coming together, and identifying if there are pockets who are pushing back and who don't want to adopt the new style. So it's making sure that everybody's involved, because if you just leave one group off to their side and they're not on board, and you won't know it. So it's making sure that everybody comes into the table to at least have the conversations about it. In terms of the next part, sorry, what?
It was about performance management.
Performance management?
About the individual who's really excited about this.
Yeah,
How
so.
do they get their ideas out there?
So anybody who's really excited about asset management can always come to their directors, but also to Jillian Harris or myself to talk about their plans, and we will make an effort to push them forward. And since you mentioned that, I think it would be, we have an internal newsletter that goes out, so we can even put a little thing in there about coming forward if you have new ideas. But I think it's really pushing everybody to try new things and to let us know how it's working and giving us feedback or
What about
ideas.
timing?
Sorry, I'm losing my voice as well from allergies, I apologize. Just one thing to add kind of in line with that is that in the past asset management plans were a bit siloed in their development. One of the new, as with the new OREGs and the approach that the town of Lincoln is taking with having the steering committee in place is that those people are now responsible for the plan, for the development of the plan, for showing the information there, and ultimately for the development of those 3-year and 10-year plans moving forward. So actually having the people who need to take charge and analyze the KPIs or the key performance indexes that go along with the levels of service in the room and developing the plan, make people accountable and bringing it forward. And since it is because it's a fluid document now, as opposed to in the past, it was a bit more of a, you develop the plan, you look at it every year, because it is a bit more of a fluid program. It provides the chance to come forward with the recommendations and bring those forward. And what we'll be doing as part of our roadmap will also be highlighting and trying to figure out how to get the staff engagement with it and make sure that the people that are contributing are kind of the right people can reach out to. They represent kind of a broader spectrum of staff versus just a kind of a linear side to it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, Madam Chair, through you, do you anticipate that as you move along, and obviously this doesn't go into some chronological order, really, do you anticipate needing more resources to help with either education or support in order to implement some of these elements?
So through the chair, we do foresee that. In the gas tax fund request, it's going to be for the first steps, doing more of the gap analysis about what we already have in place and how, and come back with a roadmap about how to fill in those gaps. After that, we would likely come back to council in order to discuss the next steps and let you know which resources are needed. But before we can ask for resources, we want to make sure we're asking for the right thing.
So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but I think that we are starting from, we're starting almost from a place of inertia. Is that what you're saying?
So not necessarily a place of inertia, more so that the work that needs to be done to identify those gaps, it's best to have an external expert come in order to build the capacity. Right now, a lot of our internal staff are focused on those day-to-day tasks that need to keep the lights on and the payroll moving. So what we need is somebody with expertise to come in and really give us that extra nudge, because right now, I hate to say it, but it is a little bit of a corner of the desk project, and we really feel that it should be front and center.
Absolutely, and I think you're wise to state that up front, because this is really important. Madam Chair, I was just going to ask if the CAO had anything to say about this. This is an incredibly important segue, and I hope that this is going to be front and center, because when we start talking about the 2020 capital budget, I'm hoping that there will be some important kernels in there that we can use to test out some of the important elements.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, I just, I'm worried about the speed with which we're going to be able to move in the near future.
Mary
You've
Sue?
done a great job explaining it. Thank you.
I think our CAO would like to add some comments.
Good.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think just to pick up on the presentation that Terry didn't, I agree with you. I thought it was a very innovative and exciting presentation on a topic. I think often when we think of asset management, and historically it's been more of an accounting exercise than it has been, I think, more of a holistic approach to infrastructure management. And I think that's really what we're looking to do. But maybe just take a quick step back. I think more recently the province has incentivized good and proper asset management planning. They haven't mandated it. And so we are now moving to that kind of regulatory state. When we look at asset management, we receive funding from senior levels of government. And so when you look at some of that gas tax funding, when you look at OSIF, which is our Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund top-up, those things haven't mandated that we have an asset management plan, but moving forward they will. So there are those, I think, checks and balances that you're going to see that senior levels of government are going to look at us to make sure we have. So I talked to you about various phases, and in the gas tax report, you're going to see a request for us to attempt to complete most of Phase 1 and Phase 2, which have dates of 2020 and 2021 as those dates where we're required to have certain things in place, and then Phase 3, which Terry talked to you about, which is more that financial strategy addressing shortfalls, proposed level of services. That is more of a 2022. But I think, I would, my comments are really around that this will become the way we need to do business, and it's going to be mandated that way. And so we are starting early, so to speak. It is something that all of us are talking about around the senior management team table. It's not just, let me reassure you, as much as Terry and Jillian have an excitement and a passion, and they get a little giddy when we're talking about asset management, and maybe the rest of us don't. It is an important conversation that all members of the senior management team are having in terms of moving forward. And so rest assured, there isn't that organizational inertia. It is something we all understand is essential for us as we move forward.
Thank you very much. And I have Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be very quick, and I appreciate the last comments that you made, Terry, and the comments from the CAO, because, this is a very nice high-level look at asset management, and the mayor kind of gave me a little push to, to say, or to ask, what do we need to do, because, the first thought I have is, you two have full-time jobs, and this is something that needs some focus, needs some attention. It's a lot of work, but happy to hear that you're. And I did read in the gas tax report that we're looking at a consultant to come in and get us started, down that road. So timelines are never fast enough. But, good to hear that we're taking action to get going on it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. I have now Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to know what we have. I think it only makes sense. The things you value, it's like when you have your home broken into, if you don't know what you have, how do you know what's gone? Is there possible savings from an insurance point of view by knowing what we have? Is there benefits through the government as well by, say we have a disaster where, things, the boardwalk disappears, and is there a benefit like that way from the ministry to recoup losses in a more expedient way?
Through the chair. So I'm not sure with our normal insurance that it would have that much of an impact. Knowing what we have, so with the flooding that happened, higher levels of government only fund the amount that it takes to get it back to pre-existing condition. So it is important that we know what the pre-existing condition is in order to get the funding even to get up to there, because the higher levels of government could argue that we're not accurately portraying what the current levels are. So it is good in that sense, but the cost savings comes more from knowing what we have, where we want to go, and that route that I mentioned, because we can evaluate, well, should we spend the upfront cost, or should we maintain it a little bit longer and then replace it later on? And it helps us to make those choices rather than directly getting funding for insurance and whatnot.
So, thank you, through you. With the asset management, we'll be inventorying, we'll be, seeing what we have of value. Are we going to put a monetary value to all of these things as well, an estimated monetary value?
So through the chair, we do have an asset inventory now. It's required for our financial side of it, and we do have to put a monetary value to all of the assets that we own. What we would be expanding is more so the life cycle costs of it, how much it costs to maintain, and then how much it costs to keep the levels of service where they are. So right now we already have that part of it. It would be more so expanding for the planning side of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Pachariva.
Thanks, Chair Timmers. Thank you very much, Terry, for the presentation. We had a presentation probably 5 years ago about multiple year budgets and waiting and waiting and waiting to get to that, because we had embraced that way of doing budgeting. So if asset management has brought us there, and you and Jillian have helped change the cultural change to get us there, I thank you very much. Question with respect to asset management. You had stated some of our valuations are current, but some aren't. So what needs updating?
So through the chair, our building and facilities audit is a few years old. So it doesn't even contain some of the buildings that we already have, and some of the replacements that were recommended in it that aren't even due to come up according to the plan, they've already been done. So technically, we don't even need them in the plan. So that kind of thing we need to update. The ones that are mandated are things like roads and our water, sewer, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but from that, like, bridges, culverts, things like that, were never life cycle costed, were never, right, so they're being funded through long-term debt and by actually having them as part of the program. It smooths things out, correct?
So through the chair, those also get regular condition assessments, and then they come back, the consultants will come back and tell us what we need to do in order to bring them up to code, and then we use that to plan. With the asset management, it would be trying to take that into a more long-term view
Yeah.
rather. And
Yeah, because right now it's knee-jerk based on an engineer's report, rather than stretching it out and saying, okay, the life cycle of this piece of infrastructure is 20 years, maintain it every 5, and then total replacement at 40 or whatever that figure is.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Madam Chair. One of the things that you're seeing the shift, at least in the water and wastewater industry, is that when you're starting to get your condition assessments coming forward, is it's not the idea of just tell me what it looks like and kind of where everything is.
Yeah.
Also give me a 10-year plan with it. So while you have the consultant there and they're doing all the analysis, providing you with that plan and how to move forward. So you're starting to see a shift in the industries with those assessments, and you'll start to see those coming forward because they need to play in line with your asset management plan, so the understanding that they need to go.
Exactly.
that
Well,
way.
that's perfect. So in essence, what it is actually doing is taking your balance sheet and actually monetizing things. You're actually putting into real life. There's a word I'm missing, Terry, but real life It's not static anymore, that's the question. Or that's the, so, yeah,
Yeah, through the chair. So with having better asset management plans, it helps us to better know how much funding we need and better, with the infrastructure reserve that we are adding to, it helps us to better know what's the number that we should be putting away. And we don't want to put away enough to get our $80,000 sports car, so to speak.
No.
We want to put away enough that's going to meet the level of expectation for our community. So it helps with that as well, to know how much should we put away, and with planning how much to borrow as well, because there are some assets that it makes sense to borrow money for. So having that long-term view helps us to balance our funding.
great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pachariva. I don't see anyone else in the queue here. Thank you very much, Terry and Jillian. That was a great presentation, Asset Management 101. And I'm really happy that we're having this conversation and all good comments around the table. You know, it's an ongoing, long process and one that will help us as a municipality make wise and decisions regarding our investments and our infrastructure. And yet it's still fluid, so we will be looking at all, you know, changes and things that are coming on us that we don't expect. So as Councillor Brunet alluded to, but anyway, I really appreciate the presentation, and it generated a very good discussion, so thank you very much. Oh, and just one other thing, we do have an ask in the gas tax report, as our CAO mentioned, regarding the asset management capacity building program. So thank you, Terry. Thank you very much. So being no further discussion, we have a motion to receive and file the asset management update as outlined in Appendix A of Report FN-10-19. We will require a mover. Councillor Brunet, all in favor? Those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. We are now considering item 8.3 AD-08-19, Municipal Modernization Funding. Our CAO, Mike Kirkopoulos, will speak to this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and there are members of the senior management team here that can address any specific questions you may have. You'll recall in March of this year, we did receive notification from the province of Ontario, being what the province considers either a rural or small municipality, that we would be receiving $725,000 towards what they called municipal modernization funding. Effectively, the look and use of technology in a number of ways to enhance the way service is delivered to residents within the community. There weren't a lot of strict criteria around it. I know previously Director Safani had spoken with our local representatives at the provincial level, Diane Ploss and her team, in terms of some of those criterias. And effectively, we kept getting pointed and directed back to the fact that it should be used on technology. It should look at modernization, IT-type projects that looked at inventories and so forth were the types of things that they would like to see this money go towards, and that following the implementation of these types of projects, there would be a conversation and a sort of check and balance in place. You will see before you that we have 4 things we're seeking council's approval on. We do go into depth in the report. One is around our GIS framework and the importance of some of that software, both from a planning perspective, an IT perspective, I'd say from the perspective of all the departments that are represented at the back, the importance of GIS and the way we use GIS to do our business. So that's one of the larger projects that is before you, and we've costed out in the financial section the various elements of that, some of it being software, some of it being the hosting, and then the data and layer connection. Now, we are also reaching out to Niagara Region to determine how that interface happens and if we can leverage any additional software and any additional costs that could be saved. The second is a record management inventory plan, and that is something our clerk, Ms. Kirkolos, is leading and can speak to. and you see that in the amount of 15,000. And the other ask is around our online customer service enhancement, and some of that is website functionality, and of course the creation of a municipal app, and you see that broken down in terms of those enhancements, the municipal application, and of course looking at a cost-effective way of using co-op students and students to do some of that work. The rest of the money, which is the lion's share, over $500,000, we are seeking to put into a reserve at this particular point in time. As an organization, we are undergoing a corporate systems review. In terms of the SMT champion on that, I'm the executive sponsor, and Ms. McKay is a member of that team, and she is, as is Ms. Terwala. Together, they're representing the senior management team, both from a department perspective and a client perspective, to work on that corporate systems review. Effectively, that's, in a more simpler term, an IT strategy, but it does take into account a number of other elements. And we thought the best approach and the most prudent approach would be not to recommend things within that IT bundle until that systems review is done. And so that's why you see that we've recommended some asks, and that is definitely the encouragement we've received from the province. Get some stuff done, get some short-term successes, get some things that you present to us. And I think the approach of putting 2/3 of that away is the most prudent approach. So we are recommending the creation of a modernization reserve, and $513,500 be put in that. So definitely can answer any questions, as can the team that's here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkopoulos. We now have Councillor McPherson. Any question?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and, you know, this is a really good news report, and, you know, some, you know, very, very good choices, I think, in what some of the spending is targeted for. I guess one of the questions I would have is with regards to the website and its functionality, and you know, I know we went through a bit of a redo of the website, and you know, I know it's very expensive to basically start from scratch and build a website, but I wonder if it's not in our best interest to look into that and to get a professional website organization in here to look at what we've got today, because I have a tough time navigating our website. I know our residents have a tough time navigating our website. I think it looks better. You know, the front page is certainly more appealing, but from a functionality standpoint, we're still forcing people to go 4, 5, 6 clicks in. So to throw another 25 grand at this thing, you know, today, does that make sense? You know, or does it make sense to you know, bring somebody in, do an estimate, here's what it would cost you. If it's 100 grand, if it's 150 grand, whatever it is, if you want this website, here's what it's gonna cost you. So at least we would know. We would know then, for us to move into a very high-functioning website, here's the cost of it. That's one comment. The other comment is around mobile municipal apps, and Councillor Brunet and I happened to talk to a couple of app builders at FCM. And, you know, towns, progressive towns around our country have apps. And they're putting out information, everything from emergency situations down on Lake Shore to what's going on in town to, you know, information sharing, and they're, from what we could tell, very inexpensive, very inexpensive. They're, you know, the one booth we stopped at, they were $325 or $350 a month. So we're talking about $4 grand a year, you know, or something around that, you know. The other one was $3 grand a year that you just pay a service fee. They build your app, and the beauty of the app is it's information push. We're not receiving, things back from the public. It's more of a, here's the information and you're sharing it. And it's fully controlled by those that are building the app and are managing the app. So just two comments there. The question about the website, I don't know where everybody's at, but the question about the website and sinking more money into our current website, and then the app, I see we've got 30 grand here for the app, and I don't quite know what that would be, so.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. I think our CAO would like to comment regarding the website.
Through you, Madam Chair, so let me take a stab at probably answering both questions, and I'll definitely start with the mobile app, and it was something that both Mayor Easton and Councillor McPherson and I did have a quick conversation on, and I absolutely agree about the importance of the various functionalities, and so there's things like near me GPS functionality, so the app knows exactly where you are, and it will highlight locations that are in a certain distance. I think about Ulink, and if you're in a certain area, using that app and integrating that app with some of our back-end infrastructure that we have, some of our back-end technology, to allow you to see where bus stops are, driving directions. There's various categories around city services and businesses and partnering with chambers and things like that. So it's an exciting opportunity. I'm glad to see council's enthusiasm around mobile applications and the importance of that. Of course, like everything, it's about readying our community for change, having these types of apps in place so that the community gets familiar with them, and that it's one more add-on to the, I think, menu of services that we provide to the community in terms of how they get information. But of course, sharing content, so there is an ability that those apps can share content via Twitter, Facebook, email. So definitely something that we do want to explore. I think whatever money is unspent in terms of the budget we've got here definitely will go back into the reserve. I think sometimes when we go out to other municipalities and when municipalities are looking at tendering some of these works, we discover maybe we don't have some of the back-end systems in place. And definitely either Shannon or Terry can speak to that on the app piece. But great to see council's support of that. As it relates to the website, I think, absolutely, if there's an ability, I think one of the first things we need to do before we do any updates is determine, is the navigation, appropriate? Maybe have a second look at it. We did actually go out, and we did definitely do it on a limited budget. We had a professional website builder, construct a website, looked at what a number of other municipalities are doing, looked at the navigation. But of course, when you set the budget for it, it's often difficult to get everything you want. And so I think one of the first things, Councillor, to your suggestion, we could definitely do is ensure that they look at the navigation, they look at some of those functionalities that we currently have in place. And I mean, Director Graham and I were out this morning talking to folks on Lakeshore, and we got some ideas on what they want to see on the website. So I think we're always trying to learn about how we communicate and how we get information. So definitely things we can take back and look at before we go out. So I don't know if either Shannon or Terry want to add something as it relates to our IT review and how that fits in.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Krakopoulos. Through to Terry.
So through the chair, more so toward your comment about whether we should get somebody external to come in. We do have a developer that we work with, and they will often suggest best practices for it. But with your idea of making it like the CAO mentioned, any ideas that other people can contribute, we can bring back to the developer, and they can help us to incorporate more.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Did you have some other comments, or to Shannon?
Through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Having been involved in a number of similar projects in my career and history that involve online e-government, web presence, app development, I think, fundamentally looking at the systems review and defining the priorities. So we're looking at all of the systems that we have in place and where we want to go. So the idea of using apps and maybe a different web infrastructure or content management system in the future is something that we need to define in our requirements. So as part of the system review, we've actually developed a team and have approached the directors to appoint individuals who are really well aligned to the business processes. This is not about finding technology to change the process. It's about defining the business process to then apply the best technology. So as I always say, a bad process offline is going to be a bad process online. So as we look at the systems review, and we can include the web system in that, we can include app development, we need to define what those requirements are for the town in its communication and in leveraging technology to support the business, because that's really what it is. It's not about technology driving the business, it's about the business defining what the requirements are, what the processes are, and then the alignment to that. So any web content management system that you go to is not going to be inexpensive. You're right, it might be 100, it might be 150, it might be more than that, based on the requirements. So if the requirements are that information is disseminated out from the website to other channels at the same time, and you're only posting content well, that's once, then that's a requirement you define, and you look for a system to meet that requirement. And there will be systems out there. And we are far along enough now in online government services and government applications that there are definitely leading municipalities out there that are doing great things online and through app development, and we can definitely tie into that. In fact, right now in Niagara is the MISA conference, the Municipal Information Systems Association conference, and that is where all of the IT directors, IT practitioners, CIOs across the country actually get together. And there's a big trade show, there's sessions, it's a 3-day conference, and it's the best way to really tap into what's going on out there, what are the best practices, and I know that our IT staff are actually there as we speak right now. So they're taking with them the requirements that we've been defining in the scope of the project for the IT systems review, and they're talking to folks, and they're talking to other municipalities about that.
Very good, thank you, Ms. McKay. We have a couple of other, is that good, Councillor? Okay.
I'd have to come back.
Okay. I know when we designed the website originally, it was very limited funds that we put into that first phase. From what I understood, it was a first phase, and that there would be a second phase of enhancing it. So this is what I feel this ask will do, is to enhance what we have and make those changes that you've brought up, or anyway. And I'm going to go to Councillor Russell right now, and if you want to go back in the queue. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question regarding the GIS. Is that going to be supported in-house with our own internal IT, or is there going to be carrying charges or service charges along with that we should be expecting down the road?
Terry, please.
So through the chair, we're actually piggybacking onto the Niagara Region's GIS software that we have. So we will have an annual cost that we'll be paying for our licenses, but we already currently have a GIS system that isn't adequate, and it costs us more than switching to the new Esri software.
So through Madam Chair, so this is a one-time cost with an increase in licensing fees, or is it a decrease in licensing fees?
Through the chair, I can get that for you, the exact dollars.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It just turned out that the most recent Municipal World that came out had several articles that were relevant to tonight's meeting, and this was one of them. And so one of the areas that they highlighted was, in regard to the apps, was from Grey Highlands. So this is not a large place, and they're obviously working at it. So I'm looking to determine, if we do the review, and we have said for some time that we were going to do the corporate review, would that look if we took another look, as Councillor McPherson recommends, and we look for improvements both operationally and organizationally, it sounds like that we'll end up having a look at our telephone system and the access to the phone and ways in which that might be able to be addressed differently. Because at the present time, it's not easy. There's a great deal of frustration in the use of it, but it's not easy to get data on what the problems are. So my question to begin with is, I guess the statement I want to make is, it sounds like we need an omnibus approach. Is there room in this report for that? And can we have the staff develop that framework to examine all the different elements before we make a final decision, not on this motion? This motion is fine, if everybody agrees, we can go forward, but I would like to see what that framework looks like, because I would like to know that operationally, we are bringing things together, and yes, in some cases, maybe we will have to look again. I don't particularly see any harm in that at all. I don't know who can answer this question, but that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Mary Sin. I'm going to refer to our CAO.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the simple answer to the mayor's question in terms of that reference to an omnibus bill type approach is, yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be a staged and a sequential order that we're going to look at these things. The corporate systems review in and of itself really should be the start of a number of these things, specifically as it relates to mobile applications, and I would, suggest the website as well, and some of the back of house systems that we have that need to be talking to each other. So things like records management and what we're doing around GIS are slightly different, but the ones like the mobile application, some of those online things that we do definitely will fall out and come out of that corporate systems review, and we're going to be before council and committee as key stakeholders. You have been identified as key stakeholders within that engagement that is required as part of the corporate systems review. So no, I don't see any issue, any concern, any problem with sequentially looking at how the works are done.
Okay, so that includes the telephone system? Through you, Madam Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm looking at staff and absolutely they're nodding. And so part of our corporate systems review, that is a corporate system. And so definitely we will look at the telephone system and we'll look at best practices. We can bring you those things. I have heard some of council's concerns as it relates to the telephone system. But we can definitely bring you information as it relates to, again, what other municipalities are doing. You highlighted a few that are small. How technology can actually benefit and focus efficiencies and that's what this report is about: modernization and efficiencies, and focus staff time on the right things and let technology do certain things. So some of that requires some change management in terms of what sometimes people expect when they call municipalities or certain areas within the municipality, but definitely those are things that we can bring forward to council and make sure that you adopt the framework or the principles by which we are looking at technology and modernization.
Okay, that's very good. Madam Chair, I have a question about records management, so I guess that this will go to Madam Clerk. We have a legacy here around the issue of records management as it relates to the destruction of records. And I think we should try and put that legacy to bed. It's either fact or it isn't. But very much I would like to know what we're going to do about archiving documents. We heard the library CAO speaking tonight about some archival work that they have to do. We know there's a Lincoln Archives. We know that there is archives with the museum, and there are archives with the town. So what kind of scope are we looking at? Is there an opportunity for a lot of duplication here? How can we ensure that that doesn't happen? But mostly, how can we ensure that we keep that we have access in the future to our important documents regarding the activities at the town.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Very good question. I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to respond.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the question. Clerks is currently doing a review of our inventory, and this is what the ask is to get somebody to help us assist and do that review on what we have in our inventory, and that is not just in clerks, it's all across the departments. It's all across the town in our facilities. It's going to be a huge review and project to undertake, rather. And I will be working with staff during the corporate strategy for this project to see what systems are out there. I'm currently also doing best practice research with other municipalities and what they have and how they archive. And so this will all be brought back in a report to council on what you can expect going forward.
Okay, that's very good news, and so I'm taking out of that there will be whatever community consultation is required in order to pull that together. It would be, this is an issue of stability, I think, in terms of the corporation, and I'm pleased to hear that you're including it. And it wouldn't surprise me if something of this magnitude wouldn't cost more than, I think it's $15,000, isn't it?
Madam Mayor, that's just for the co-op student to help assist gather some of this information that we need to move forward, to make a decision on what systems and what we need to do in order to get everything under one house.
Okay, and what are the additional costs, Madam Chair, that we should be looking for?
Through you, Madam Chair. So once we have this information, hopefully near the end of 2019, like I said, there will be a report brought back with next steps in determining, working with community stakeholders, and whatever systems that we require, the amount will be brought into that report then. I don't have that right now.
Okay, that's fine, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that it was noted that there would be additional resources required. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mary Sin. I think our CAO has some more comments to add to that.
Just through you, Madam Chair, and probably tangential to all the comments, I think we've taken a very incremental approach, not wanting again to predetermine or set budget aside or even set approvals aside until we know exactly what needs to be done. And so similar to my comments around some of our online enhancements, I think our approach would be, let's get some of the legwork done, let's get some of the corporate systems reviews done, for example, and then let's determine if and when and where we need to spend money and what that looks like. The good thing is, again, over $500,000 of that will be put in a modernization reserve so that we can tap into come next budget, come when we're ready to do that in terms of when council seeks those reports. So I want to, both caution council and reassure council that we will not be spending that money until we actually do some of the basic data gathering work that needs to happen first.
Okay, thank you very much. I now have Councillor McPherson. Oops. Okay, hold on. What happened?
Sorry about that. It was my fault.
You want me here? I'll drop.
Back in?
Okay, Councillor McPherson.
All right, I'm on. So, just a comment to Terry and to Shannon. Thank you very much for your responses, and it's very exciting to hear that we're going down that corporate services review and that we are including all of our key communication pieces to our community. So we'll look forward to the report coming back as to where we are going with this. So yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
I agree. This is a really good news story. That's a lot of money that we have to put towards the review of the corporate services and the website enhancements and also the mobile app, which I'm really excited about that. And I just want to put a little plug in about that app. Our CAO talked about ULink being on there right in your hand, but I'd also like to see on there our places of interest and maybe our designated properties and our heritage properties on that app as well. That was something that the Heritage Committee had talked about, and I think that would be really exciting if that could be in there as well. So over to Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. Through you to staff, when looking at the website and communications in that area, do we track data as far as resident concerns about the website, like how we can enhance it, how we can make it better, what's working, what's not working? Moving forward, if we're going to be possibly looking at something like this, do we track concerns that residents have as far as ease of access?
Thank you, Councillor Mikulik. I think our CAO would like to comment on that.
Through you, Madam Chair. The way I think we look at all complaints that come in, Councillor, and through our kind of customer service and frontline staff is there is a tracking. I think a lot of it is more thematic in nature in terms of what are the areas of complaints we get, where are those complaints, what do we need to follow up on. A lot of the ones that are very specific do find themselves and do find their ways to the department heads. Some of them find their way to myself, and then we action those particular items. But we can definitely look at sharing some of that information. I'd have to go back and determine specifically how in-depth it is. I think sometimes we hear one or two complaints on a number of things, but I'd like to, before I throw numbers out, I'd like to go back and actually check. But I think thematically we know where we get the most complaints, whether that's garbage collection, whether that's snow clearing, and those sorts of things. So we do definitely track that information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And it's just through you. It's just even my use of the current website the way it is, sometimes I get lost in it, or I'm not able to find certain aspects of municipal affairs that I'd like to research. And I just, if the public could provide input moving forward, if we're going to be looking at this to enhance it or to make it more user-friendly, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Do you have another comment?
Through you, Madam Chair, our corporate systems review has that stakeholder engagement built into it as well. And so when we're talking to members of the public, we'll be talking to them about all sorts of interactions and all sorts of usability as it relates to all of our systems.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. Seeing no one else in the queue, so very good discussion. Being no further discussion, we have a motion to approve the transfer of the municipal modernization funds to establish a technology modernization reserve, to approve the GIS implementation project as outlined below to be funded from the technology modernization reserve, to approve the records management inventory plan as outlined below to be funded from the technology modernization reserve, and to approve the online customer service enhancements as outlined below to be funded from the technology modernization reserve. We will require a mover. Deputy Mayor Russell. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. We're now considering item 8.4 AD-09-19, 2019 federal gas tax one-time funding. And our CAO will be speaking to this report.
Through you, Madam Chair, once again, this is a very similar report, a very similar exercise that staff took in looking at the recommendations that are before you. And once again, a similar approach in terms of putting some monies aside to reserves and then looking at some projects that, for a number of reasons, required funding and looking at our budget process throughout the year. Sometimes these extra infusion of dollars are very helpful so that we're not going to the levy. In this particular case, again in March, we did receive confirmation from the federal government that we would receive a one-time infusion of just over $716,000 for a total allocation this year of about $1.45 million. Typically, our allocation has been in that $700,000 range, and that goes as part of our budget process to fund local roads and bridges. This money that we did receive again, was that one-time infusion. We don't expect it to continue, but we did look at it and take a similar approach. What were things that it could be spent on? And in this case, we were given some criteria that we looked at. Still general and broad-based criteria, but nonetheless certain capital criteria and study criteria. And so as you see, we're recommending a little over half of this money going into a reserve for future infrastructure. The $366,000 does equate to about 2.5% on our levy, should we at some point want to use it to fund additional roads and other projects next year. You see $250,000 for something we've been talking about for some time, and that is the gateway and wayfinding signage that will come out of our tourism strategy. And as you heard in the previous presentation from Terry and Jillian, the asset management capacity building program and the $100,000 that we're seeking to start that work.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Seeing none? There being no further discussion, we have a motion to approve the transfer of the 2019 federal tax one-time funding to the Gas Tax Reserve Fund and approve funding from the Gas Tax Reserve Fund for gateway and wayfinding signage as a result of the tourism strategy, and approve funding from the Gas Tax Reserve Fund for the Asset Management Capacity Building Program. We will require a mover. Councillor McPherson. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. We are now considering item 8.5 LS-10-19, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Board appointments for the town of Lincoln. And I believe our Madam Clerk is going to speak to that report.
Through you, Madam Chair. So as you can see, there was some correspondence received from the region, and staff are therefore seeking council direction on what council's decision is to move forward and put the name forward for the region of Niagara for their consideration. The region of Niagara does have to approve each recommendation based on their review. So at this time, there is a request from Regional Council that the remaining 8 local municipalities submit their recommendations for representatives on the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Board by July 31st. The region of Niagara does meet on June 20th, and there's another meeting on July 18th, so there is time for council to consider and put their recommendation forward. In past practice, it was, there wasn't a policy, it was a practice that the local municipality give the regional council first right of refusal. However, it has been deemed now that it has brought back to the local municipality to make that recommendation. So some municipalities have done things a little bit differently, whereas they've directed staff to do a citizen recruitment. Some have selected to do that. Some have selected to appoint the regional councillor. Some have appointed mayors. So it's up to the local municipality to decide what the recommendation should be. And that's the report before you tonight.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. So I'm going to open up the queue for questions. And first we have Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would make a motion, if we need to make a motion or a suggestion, that we do look at going out into the community and see what we would get for applications to this position. That's not to say that we don't end up with Councillor Foster as our representative, but I think it behooves us to at least see what would come forward in an application. I mean, if we look at, some of the committees that we've brought together and the quality of people that are coming forward to volunteer their time for the town, I don't see why this would be any different. So we've got a time period that we can work with it, and I think it would just make sense that at this time, we take advantage of that, and that we go out to the community. We probably set up a committee to evaluate the applicants and go out to the community and see what we get. We've got a nice matrix from Alberta in the report to use when evaluating board members, and you know, I think it just would be in our town's best interest to take that course. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you very much, Councillor McPherson. And I now have Mayor Easton.
Madam Chair, I have some additional information that I would like to just put on the table. I'm not going to make any comments about the process. We don't have, we have a matrix, but I don't know if there is a consensus on the use of the matrix. However, at the regional meeting, when we last met, it is my belief, and I will stand by this, I believe that the selection should be made by an arm's length group. And by that, I mean, we have a system that we implemented this year in the town of Lincoln where criteria were set. So if it's determined that the matrix, the Alberta matrix, is the one to use, I would like to recommend that we use the same process so that it is more arm's length. The NPCA appointment is always has a lot of angst assigned to it. It's just a historical thing. I've had a number of phone calls from people that would like to sit on the board. I have a memo here from the Deputy Chair, Councillor Diane Hewson, and she has, where she outlined for me that there are currently 4 members of the board that have relevant environmental backgrounds. However, financial backgrounds and legal backgrounds are also important. I am somewhat concerned that we could end up with a board that is very unbalanced because it's being done in a piecemeal fashion. So I have no interest in sitting on the board. And so I'll just leave it at that and let the, and have the council make their recommendations.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments, Madam Mayor. I'm going to now go to Councillor Bernay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm glad that we're finally talking about this. I've been of the mindset since when I knocked on doors during the election in October that you know, it's the old story, you don't know what you don't know. And I talked to a number of people during the election. A gentleman up on Cherrywood is an example that had moved to Lincoln from Georgetown. He sat on the NPCA up in Georgetown. He's volunteering at Balls Falls now. I believe he told me he put in 300 hours of volunteer work. He'd love to be on there. That's just one example. You know, I think we all agree. We've been hearing it from the taxpayers for a long time. The NPCA has been in the news all for the wrong reasons. It's been a dysfunctional organization. I think taxpayers are looking for a change, and I think we need to give it to them. So I agree with Mayor Easton that it does need to be an arm's length. I don't think that, you know, we should be doing interviewing. But I do believe that we do have people in our community that if we did a posting on our website and advertisement in the paper, that we would get environmentalists, people that have development experience, preservation experience, conservation experience, business acumen. And when I look at what St. Catharines and Welland and Grimsby and Fort Erie have done, I take my hat off to them. They've got ahead of this, and I'm really glad that we're now making a decision. I have nothing against Councillor Foster. I think he's done a yeoman's job in participating while Judge Ramsey had made his decision to pull people off there. And those regional councillors that have been on there have been a great job moving it forward. But I think it's a missed opportunity if we don't go out to our community and find out who is interested here. But I do agree with Mayor Easton that this should be an arm's length decision, and I completely concur. It's been something I've been worried about since I've been watching what other municipalities doing, is that it could really be, fractured in the experience, and that would be something that we might live to regret. So I do believe that this is a really important decision. I don't believe it's something we should jump into. I understand, they're looking for a decision because I think they've extended those positions for 3 months, so they're looking for something fairly quickly. But like I say, I'm repeating myself now, but this has been a dysfunctional organization in the news for all the wrong reasons, and we need to deal with this professionally and properly. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brunei. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just some clarification on the arm's length committee. Help me to understand how that looks and why we would not be the committee to select the MPCA representative for our town. Why this council would not be involved in that? Thank you, Madam
Clerk,
Chair.
or would you be able to respond to that, or to our CAO? Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, why don't both of us take a stab at that?
Thank you.
I think, considering the years of, I think, turmoil at the MPCA, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I characterize it that way, definitely from a staff perspective, I think, the request or the comment around something arm's length, similar to the process that the town undertook, there definitely was, when we were looking at standing our number of our kind of external committees, there was an approach that we took where the clerk with the particular client department, so to speak, or the department most involved, and the CAO in some cases would sit on those committees. Of course, we'd have the counselor that represents that particular committee also sit with us. But I think there's a number of ways to look at what that arm's length committee looks at. I think ultimately council needs to make the decision. Council needs to be comfortable with the process. So I think, we're really within council's hands. I don't know if there's a criteria that council could adopt that you want then, whatever that arm's length looks like, committee to do. But again, staff are willing to assist and undertake a similar process. In this case, it would probably be more of our staff that have a connection to the NPCA. So whether that's both community services, planning, public works in a lot of ways, the clerk, myself, we can definitely make ourselves available. And then should council want to partake in that, we can also facilitate in terms of how we structure that committee, so to speak. So I don't know if our clerk has anything to add.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the only thing that I would add to that is that the process would be similar to how we've done the citizen advisory committees. It may not be with council sitting in on those particular interviews. There's a number of different ways that we could do that, just as the CAO has pointed out. The only thing that I would see coming back is we would go into close to discuss who those citizens have been that have applied and discuss the process for it, and then bring back those recommendations to you. That would be an in-camera discussion, and then you would make your recommendations from there. That recommendation would then be given to the regional clerk in Niagara for their final consideration. The one thing is that I will point out that other municipalities who have done a citizen recruitment, the citizens have applied. It was then brought to council to decide, not necessarily an interview process, but just an application process. So that doesn't mean that we can't do things, a little bit different. There's no set process to this. That's the confusing part about it, that has been. So I just want to make that very clear.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I think our process for our other committees was very successful, and we had very good quality applicants, and The interview process was done very well, and I agree that we should be arm's length in this decision as well. I have Councillor Pachariva, you have question or comments?
Thanks, Chair Timmers. Through
Thank
you. I'm just wondering where we are on the letter dated April 23rd, 2019, from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. In this letter, it states that, where did I have it? That the NPCA board and staff recommend a list of competencies modeled after that matrix. Like, has the NPCA not come up with this matrix? Like, it's, and wondering why not? Like, so it's, you know, Councilor Bernay talked about it. So you went and you saw the effect of all municipal councilors on there. And maybe it wasn't the councilors themselves, or maybe it was the councilors themselves. But you need a mix. And I think what the NPCA should have done is said, okay, if there's 12 municipalities and there's 12 boards, we need 6 external residents, and we would like 6 politicians on there. And every municipality submit 2 names based on a matrix that's developed, and take it from there. But, you know, there's a bit to continuity, there's a bit to, and the mayor had mentioned this, like you go from one scenario where you're all politicians to another scenario where there's none. But what's the matrix that you're trying to seek, and what's the skill set of the other people that our person can be complementary to that or fill a void? Right? Because you're going to be in the same boat. You're going to have 12 environmentalists, and you're going to you might be lacking the business acumen, you might be lacking the legal background. So it's open-ended. It's much like the municipal governance review, where there is actually nothing to look at, and it's all circumstance and haphazard, and might it be 1, might it be 4? Something should have come out to say, this is what we're looking for. And you could have changed it. It's about change. But it's not about change, it's about the same. So, just looking for, you know, whether it's through the CAO, like why the Conservation Authority they've had an opportunity to get out in front of this and they haven't. So.
Thank you, Councillor.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the one piece of clarity that I can add is that we have received nothing to date as it relates to a skills matrix that was set up or given to us by the NPCA.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. At this point, we've had 4. We don't know what the whole makeup of this group is, do we? We have some people that we know for sure. I don't know the numbers. I don't have them in front of me. We have 4 citizens so far. And what else do we have? Like, I see it being a mix. It's not going to be all citizens. Mayor Easton, could you answer that? Do you know who's been appointed and who has not? I don't know how I can turn you on, because I have Councillor McPherson next. Yeah, okay.
And hold that thought,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
thank you.
So just back to this arm's length thing, and I don't want to beat it to death, but at the end of the day, we're going to make the decision. This council is going to make the decision. So whether we do the interview process, as we've done with the other committees, the council was very involved with the interview process. Whether we're in that or not, at the end of it, it's our recommendation. It's this council's recommendation. So the arm's length piece of it, to me, it's still, you know, semantics. It's you know, we still have to make that decision. So why wouldn't we be involved in the process? And why, together with staff, absolutely. You know, I like the process that we had for the committees, but you know, we need to own the decision. You know, so you know, I guess I'm still not getting what we're talking about as far as arm's length. I just don't understand what we mean by that. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Over to our Madam Clerk, you have comment?
I do. Through you, Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So, Councillor McPherson, I will say that, again, there is no set process to this on how council makes their decision. This is up to council. This is up to Town of Lincoln Council on how best you want to make this decision for yourselves. And so I hand it back to you and your colleagues to determine how best to do that. You know, by all means, this is in your hands, and so this is your decision.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Easton.
The first thing that I'd like to make reference to is page 42, at the bottom of the page where it says, further that the NPCA board and staff recommend a list of competencies modeled from the Alberta Public Agencies Matrix. And then they added that on as an appendix to their letter. So I interpreted that as meaning that this is the matrix that they're suggesting. Secondly, I do have, but I mean, I'm certainly willing to hear anything that anybody has to say, but it's clear. And it says that they recommend it to the region of Niagara in order that the region can forward the competencies to their municipalities, right, regarding whether they wish to recommend to the region to appoint an elected or citizen appointee. So they provided us with that guideline. And then it says, please find attached a copy. Seems to me that they're trying to make this connection very deliberately. So this is what I know from June 3rd. The municipalities with civilian appointments included in the recent motion that are now active members of the board with relevant environmental backgrounds. And this was a motion where members that were on the NPCA whose municipalities had already identified a new member, a new public member, were interested in exiting. So they are St. Catharines, Welland, where the person has environmental planning and compliance policy, law, in brackets, Fort Erie, environmental management and assessment, and Grimsby, whose representative is a conservationist that studies fish and wildlife biology. And the remaining 8 municipalities that have to articulate their appointment by July 31st include Pelham, and the representative from Pelham has been confirmed, and that is Councillor Hewson. And Port Colborne, where again, Mayor Steele, Councillor Steele has been confirmed. And West Lincoln, who have opted to initiate a public application process. Thorold, who have initiated a public application process, but they didn't have a name yet. That could have happened though by now. And Wainfleet, who has confirmed a local councillor appointment. And this person is a member of the Green Party and an advocate for environmental and economic sustainability. Niagara-on-the-Lake, Councillor Zalepa will be seeking reappointment. He hasn't been, that has to be determined. Niagara Falls, Councillor Greenwood will be seeking reappointment as the same to be announced. And Lincoln, Rob Foster's, Councillor Foster seeking reappointment. So I can give this to the clerk if it's of any value. But she is concerned that there will be a collapse of the subcommittees as a result of a large turnover. So I'm not going to go into part of that because I don't know how much of this is solicitation and how much of it is clear concern. So that's what I know about that.
Thank you, Mary Easton.
So I guess what I'm saying is I believe the criteria was given to us.
Yeah.
And so that's good. And I just want to explain that when I made reference to an arm's length approach, I was looking for no counselors to be involved. Why? Because of the controversies. Because it doesn't seem to make any difference what you do, what criteria you use, there is going to be controversy. I think it's unnecessary. We have very good staff who just took us through a process, and they're quite capable of operating with this criteria, and I would trust them to make a final decision. And that's my only reasoning, but I'm happy to stand down if other counselors are looking for something different. I understand.
Thank you very much, Mary Ston. So, we need to make a decision and decide on a motion of what we're going to. Oh, we have more people coming on the queue, okay. Councillor Brunet.
So I'll just go back to my comment. I do believe it's a missed opportunity if we don't do a posting. So, I mean, I would recommend that we immediately do a posting. We put something on our website, and let's see what interest we get. And, you know, I go back to what Mayor Easton said. You know, we don't want to be putting 8 environmentalists and conservation on. We need a blend. We need to make sure that we're putting the right person on here. Let's go through the process and see what interest we get. You know, and at the end of the day, if we look at what the interest is and we deem through whatever process and whatever participation is, whether we use the same you know, concept and process that we use with the agencies, boards, and committees, whatever the process we deal with, but let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's see what interest we get. Maybe at the end of the day, it's Councillor Rob Foster. So, you know, I just think it's a missed opportunity, and I've been wondering why in God's creation we haven't been jumping on this, because we knew it was coming, and we know there are probably people out there that are very interested. So let's find out who they are, and let's start going down that process.
Thank you, Councillor Brunet. I think we're starting to come to a consensus around the table that this is what we're looking to do, is to go out to citizens. And at the end of the day, it is our decision. So I'll go to the next. I see your Councillor McPherson up again here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the mayor for that explanation, and I appreciate where she's coming from. And I personally would look at this as looking forward instead of looking backwards, you know, in that, you know, yeah, we know where the MPCA was and what they went through, but I would look at this as, you know, an opportunity to put a quality person on the MPCA board, and for that board to be much higher functioning moving forward, and have no issue with a connection to that choice. In fact, you know, I would go so far as to volunteer to be on that selection committee as a former MPCA board member. I would volunteer to be on that selection committee, working with staff, and I totally agree that staff has all of the capabilities to make a fine decision in this. But that's where I'm at with regards to making a selection moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Next, we have Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I think that Councillor Foster has been doing a fine job. He's doing a great job. He's a good man. I think that I echo the sentiments that I think we should explore what's out there. If we don't go searching, we will certainly not find. The concern I have is with regards to the matrix that we're using, what weight we're giving towards governance. Should we have too many public citizens with no governance experience, we're forced to make this, to make a decision on who we're selecting without knowing the makeup of the board, as far as who the existing or who the proposed applicants will be. The other thing I'd like make sure is that you know, should the applications come in, you know, we also have to leave it on the table that Councillor Foster could be the best man for the job because he has that governance experience. It must be 14 years or something to that effect, or more. He has that governance experience, and that's where I wonder about the weight factor. You know, I don't know if the Alberta model or the Alberta matrix factor, if that what sort of weight that gives on governance. So I just, when whatever committee we decide on to make that selection, whether it's staff, whether it's council, I personally think that all of us here, as well as staff, any one of us could sit on that selection committee and make an appropriate choice to represent our town that we live in. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Mayor Easton.
Madam Chair, I would just point out that there isn't anything in any of this criteria or the motions that have been set forward that would disregard the town of Lincoln making more than one recommendation. If we had two excellent candidates and one was a public member and one was a public member, or a politician, there isn't anything that I can see that would eliminate us doing that. And so, once again, because things are not clear, and I would point out that until this most recent meeting, I've forgotten when the last meeting was now, things continued to be very, very unsettled at the board. And even though some municipalities did go forward, the criteria that they use to choose their members is not the criteria that the other 8 are using. And so we already have an issue with, the disparity between those people in their selection. So when I talk about controversy,
Yeah.
it's an ongoing matter, and that's not going to be resolved in our individual councils or at the region, I might add.
Thank you, Mayor Easton, for those comments. That's very true. Some of the people that were put up very quickly we don't know. I have Councillor Pachariva.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. Yeah, I echo Councillor Brunet and Councillor McPherson's comments is that, throw the ask open. There's an opportunity. Let's see what comes back. Let's use this matrix. And to Councillor Miklock's concern, I wouldn't be so concerned about governance per se, because when we were doing our applications for our internal boards, governance is sitting on a board, whether it's a school board or not a school board, but a local parent council, hockey board, Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, anything that has a board, it's knowing about governance and how a meeting takes place and demonstrate the knowledge of the board, how a board functions, because that's what they're doing. You know what, I would rather have someone that had little government experience because, it's about a board being effectively being able to manage the affairs of that. So I think that's a box, much like in our boards that, when we had that, that's one. So that's a box of 10 check marks. Each one's worth 1. You get 9 out of 10. So there you go. And so I look forward to throwing out that notice, seeing what we get, evaluating, and then let's take it from there. And let's be the ones that use this matrix, because it's already set out.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Okay, I don't see anyone else in the queue. I need some direction here, so. Yes, that's what I'm doing. I require a motion requesting that a citizen, it seems that's the consensus here. Yes, okay. Okay, so I need, okay.
Madam Chair, can I just add something?
Of course.
So I would, I've given you and circulated to council options for you, as you've all discussed tonight. One of those is amend the motion to direct the town clerk to conduct a public recruitment process. What I would like to add to that motion is that the clerk come back to the next general business and finance with recommendations for that committee. And then that would give an opportunity at that time to make your recommendation. So that would give enough time to advertise and receive all the applications. That's about a month's time. And then whatever council decides, if you want it to be arm's length, where it's just staff, CAO, to conduct whatever interviews are necessary, or would you, I think it should be brought to the table for you to discuss if you want to have council representatives on that.
Thank you very much. So,
Stand up for that motion, or bring it.
okay.
So, Madam Chair, I will bring a motion to amend the current motion to direct the town clerk to conduct a public recruitment process.
Thank you. And we also need to add that recommendations will be brought back to the next General Business and Finance Committee. Is somebody, sorry?
We also need council to decide on who's on the.
Yes. Is someone updating that amendment? Okay. Okay, and we also. Okay. We also need to make a decision on the makeup of the committee that will be doing the interviewing.
The next meeting, after you come back?
No, right now.
Let's vote on it.
I think, I don't know if we're clear on the decision on the makeup of the interview committee. I am more than satisfied with the staff and the CAO conducting that interview process. So I do not support any counselors sitting on that. So I think we need to come to a consensus around the table. So do we want to do that as a separate motion or as an amendment? If, it needs to be separate, I think. Yes. Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, Councillor McPherson. Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, my motion is to amend the motion to direct the town clerk to conduct a public recruitment process and the clerk come back to the next GBF, General Business and Finance, thank you, meeting,
With recommendations?
period. With recommendations?
Okay, so everyone's heard the motion. All those in favor to this motion? Those opposed? And that is carried.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Madam Clerk?
Through you, sorry to interrupt you. If you could now have a discussion about who you want to have sit on that interview committee, please.
Right. So we need to come to a consensus on the interview committee, and then we will do a motion regarding that with our decision. So how do you want to do this? You want to I'll open the queue for discussion? Any comments or anyone want to speak to it? Deputy Mayor Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we first have a potential listing from the staff side of who, because I think that's the easiest part, to see who would be on the committee from the staff side, and then determine whether or not it's a requirement to have counselors included in that.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk or CAO, if you could answer.
Through you, Madam Chair, typically the way we've done it, as I highlighted earlier, was the client department most related to the committee that we were recruiting for was part of that process. Definitely Ms. Kirkolos, as our town clerk, was on that. The CAO was invited to participate in these. Some of that was just scheduling that I didn't go, but as a member of that committee, this is one that I would be sitting with our clerk on. And then again, when I highlighted looking at the departments that are most related to the NPCA, we have the three members sitting to the right of the table, Director Graham, McKay, and Dale. So right there, there's 5, but that's not to say that we can't, one could volunteer out. I just think the 3 of them are related in some way. That would make sense. I think it's very defendable. And then that's one option and one process. Should then council want to add a member of council to that, then we would have a 6-member committee, which is also appropriate. I mean, at the end of the day, I think as our clerk has highlighted, we are in council's hands.
Thank you very much. Did that answer your question? Okay. I have Councillor Brunet.
So I appreciate that those staff members would be involved. I think, Councillor McPherson has articulated that he would have an interest. And I think if he does have an interest, I mean, let's face it, he is the only person around this horseshoe that I'm aware of, other than Councillor Foster, who's participated in the NPCA over the last 2 years. So he has an appreciation. If he's interested and willing, I would support him being involved in the process as well.
Thank you, Councillor Brunet. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the councilor's support, and I'm very comfortable with the group that has been recommended. That at the end of the day, it's going to be a council decision anyway, so it's going to be on us at the end of the day. So to have another person in on the process, to me, doesn't make any sense, because we've already got 5, and to sit in front of 6 people as a interviewer of many people over many years, having 6 people in an interview doesn't help the interview. So I would say I don't need to be on this, and at the end of the day, I think it is council's decision. So the recommendation coming from the interview team will then be decided upon by council.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. So, I think we've made our decision. We need a motion. Do you have the motion? Do we need to?
A verbal motion is fine from anyone, if they want to
Okay.
direct the CAO or the clerk.
Okay. Councillor Pachariva? Yep. I'll put you on. There you go.
Through you, Chair Timmer, so I would like to make a motion that our committee for interviewing our citizen appointments recruitment process for the NPCA consists of our CAO, Mr. Kirkopoulos, our clerk, Ms. Kirkolos, our Director of Planning and Development, Ms. Dale, our Director of Community Services, Ms. McKay, and our Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Graham.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Councillor Pachariva. So we have our motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. So we have no confidential items. Do we have any staff remarks? Seeing none? Oh, our CAO.
Through you, Madam Chair, I did want to take a moment. We did have an earlier conversation on asset management. We will be having our community services and infrastructure meeting on Wednesday, and I did actually share an email and reach out to Chair Brunet on that. But staff will be finding an opportunity, hopefully, on that committee. And I've yet to speak to Ms. Kirkolos, but maybe we do it in that similar session like this, where staff have an opportunity to provide some comments, to provide you a brief update on Lakeshore and some of the Lakeshore issues that we've experienced. As I said earlier, Director Graham and I were out early this morning to meet with residents. A meeting with one resident turned into a much larger meeting, and I think it's just incumbent upon us to try to share with you some of that information in a public setting. And I know members of the community did express an interest in actually attending that particular meeting and subsequent meetings as well. So I did just want to highlight that for council so that you're aware of it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkopoulos. And now, any committee remarks? Oh, we have Mary Stin.
Madam Chair, I'm looking for some guidance here. Again, we're going to be having the Transportation Master Plan come forward. And I'm concerned about an article that I read about congestion that's occurred because of autonomous vehicles and how we might, can we expect that to be part of it? Has that been part of the discussion? Otherwise, I'll bring a notice of motion forward.
Thank you, Mary Stin. I'm looking to see if there's someone that would comment. Director Graham?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So we can bring that to the Transportation Master Plan. It isn't finalized yet. It will be coming back to committee in September. So be happy to take that and make sure that's being reviewed, so.
Okay, I would just add that it is the current, the June Municipal World, and it's on page 5, and then the name of the article is Don't Wait to Prepare. I was quite surprised at some of the findings, and so I wanted to make sure that it was going to be part of it. And I'm bringing it up at this committee because I didn't want to wait and then find out that it was too late to provide any more information to them.
Good. Thank you, Mary Stin. Thank you, Director Graham. Did you have comments? No? Okay. Councillor McPherson?
Just a quick question for this committee. We have a budget session set for July 31st, and just a question if there's anything you can share with us about what is happening July 31st. Through to you, to Terry? Great.
Thank you,
So-
Terry.
Through the chair, yes, we'll be coming on July 31st to talk about the budget planning for 2020. We had also had some meetings. We were planning on doing some one-on-one meetings with the wards over the next 2 weeks, but with the priority setting sessions and also with our changeover of a treasurer, that's going to get delayed a little bit. But we are going to still meet with everyone and then come to the July 31st to discuss the next steps for it.
Thank you. And I guess my question was more around, there's a significant amount of time on that evening that, I think there's 4 or 5 hours that you've got in the invitation. So it just struck me as, here we are at the end of July and we're going to have a 5-hour budget meeting.
Go ahead.
So through the chair, I don't believe that it will take that long. Our presentation definitely won't take that long. It will all depend on how much discussion the council would like to have. So we'll have a overarching presentation about the engagement we've already had to date, and then let the discussion flow from there.
Great. There isn't a better way to go into the August recess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other comments, this meeting is adjourned.